had tremendous respect for his father's wishes, and a desire to join the privileged class himself, and had arranged the previous autumn to take a lease on an estate in Hertfordshire. Had Darcy joined him then, he might have persuaded his friend away from the path he had ultimately chosen, but only a month before he was due to attend his friends, his dear sister Georgiana had come within a hair's breadth of eloping with a most unsuitable man, a man with whom Darcy had many years' experience. That he had not warned his sister about Wickham's character was a mark against Darcy. Then again, as her companion had been a confederate in Wickham's scheme to obtain Georgiana's dowry, any hesitation on her part might have ended in disaster. The salient point was that Georgiana had been so affected, so heartbroken by the experience, Darcy had felt it necessary to cancel his visit with his friends. A voice inside his head whispered that he had also wished to avoid Miss Bingley, but Darcy insisted to himself that his primary motivation had been to care for his sister. Instead of attending Bingley to Hertfordshire, Darcy had informed him by letter of his change in plans, and they had returned to Pemberley, where Darcy had undertaken the office of soothing Georgiana's hurts and building her confidence. She had made great strides these past months, regaining her equilibrium and perhaps a little perspective. Such trials often brought about growth, and in his sister's case, Darcy was certain she was wiser than she had been before. Darcy's actions, however, had come with a cost, for he had not been in Hertfordshire to assist his friends. During his time in Hertfordshire, Bingley had become enamoured with one of the local women, and had married her earlier that spring, despite Darcy's urging that he should take care and not jump into marriage without considering the ramifications. Furthermore, Darcy knew his friend had broken with his sisters, though more particularly the younger, since the last time he had seen him. But the society of those sisters was no loss to Darcy. He could only wonder if the break had come about at the instigation of his new bride. Bingley's penmanship, always difficult to decipher, had left Darcy with some gaps as to what had happened. He hoped he was soon to discover what he had not already puzzled for himself. A knock on his door interrupted Darcy's thoughts, and he called permission to enter. When it opened, Georgiana stood in its frame, looking at him with a hint of curiosity. Darcy grinned at her and invited her in, reflecting that earlier that year she might have looked uncertain instead of simply inquisitive. "Are you impatient for Mr. Bingley's arrival?" asked Georgiana, when she had crossed the room and sat in the chair near him. "For several reasons," replied Darcy. "I have not seen Bingley in over a year. It will be good to have him with us again." "Neither of us possesses his cheerful manners," observed Georgiana. "We have not had such joy in our midst since the last time Anthony visited." Darcy smiled at the mention of their cousin, Colonel Anthony Fitzwilliam. "In many ways they are quite similar, are they not?" "They are," agreed Georgiana. "But I do not wish to speak of Mr. Bingley, though if I had allowed myself to be persuaded, I might have had him for myself." Intrigued, Darcy regarded his sister. "Do you speak of something in particular?" "You are aware of Miss Bingley's wishes?" Nodding, Darcy said. "It is not as if she ever hid them. But it sounds like you speak of something more specific." Georgiana shrugged. "There were enough times that she made subtle, or what she considered subtle, comments about her brother and me. One of the last times I saw her, she was a little more insistent, speaking of how Charles was searching for a wife, and what sort of woman would suit him." "And you figured prominently in that description, I suppose?" said Darcy, with a snort of disgust. "Miss Bingley might as well have advertised it in the newspaper," said Georgiana, provoking Darcy to laugh. "The way she was looking at me as she spoke, I knew she was enumerating my virtues, as she saw them. And after a time her words became more outlandish and blatant. Even Mrs. Hurst was embarrassed.